but that little baby deer, obsessed. Next up, how do I even talk about this book? Okay, will I be reading the sequel to Metal Slinger this month and making a live reaction to it? Testing. Hello. Hi. Welcome to another monthly wrap up. And I'm so excited because I feel like the past few months I've come to you with like 1 or 2 books that I've enjoyed and then a handful that I really didn't. This time I'm coming to you with a handful that I really liked and a couple that didn't hit. Actually, really, I don't have any complaints. Like the worst crime of any of these books is like I was a little bored. So it was a good reading month. I'm so excited. Also, what I'm very excited about is towards the end of the month, I got a couple ARCs, some advanced reader copies, some books that are coming out this year that I'm very excited for. I read one halfway through another one, so I'm excited to talk about those. Also, just a reminder, if you want to review books and get advanced reader copies and you like don't necessarily want to be on BookTube, there are so many ways in which you can be active online in like a book reviewing space, which leads me to the sponsor of this video, which is the wonderful Squarespace. You know and love them. They're a great place to host your online presence, whether that is a shop using their monetization features, a more like community-based kind of site with comment sections and an emailing list. Their free templates are really easy to use to make a really professional looking website. They also have a really great analytics section to help you with SEO and things like that. If you are interested in setting up some kind of book blog or anything of the like, you can go to squarespace.com/caricakes and get 10% off of your first website or domain. The book space always needs new voices, new thoughts, new POVs. Nobody has the same experience with a book, so yours is valuable. Let me just dive in. Let me take a sip of my coffee. But diving into what I did read in May, ironically, I'm going to start with the worst book of the month. The first one I read. At first I was thinking, oh no, another dud of a month, but we turned it around. So let me just get this one out of the way. I read The Last of Earth. I mentioned it at the end of my April reading wrap up as well. Darn, the first maybe 10-20% was really interesting. I was intrigued by the setup, by the concept. We are in Tibet in the 1800s. We're basically following 2 British people that are trying to get into Tibet, which is like closed to foreigners at the time, and they're going there for different reasons. I really have nothing to say about it other than it was really anticlimactic and boring, and there was one part that I was interested in because it's like a man has joined this mission in order to find his best friend, maybe lover, who went missing when he was on a similar mission about 6 months ago. That was really the only piece of the puzzle that I was interested in. And then once we kind of got to that part, I was so bored that I just didn't really care. So unfortunately, The Last of Earth did nada for me. But we got it out of the way so that I could read more interesting things. So let's just forget that. The first good book I read in May is Smaller and Smaller Circles. This was actually gifted to me years ago, and it's been sitting on my shelf. I've had the physical copy of it on my shelf, and I just don't know why I haven't read it yet. This was so good, but trigger warning, like very dark. This takes place in the Philippines, and we're following 2 priests who are trying to solve a string of murders. Like I said, it's really dark. We have been finding bodies of young boys in like the dump. One of the priests is a doctor. I believe he's a forensic anthropologist. So he's qualified to be doing autopsies and looking at these bodies. So he is firsthand investigating these cases. And of course, the victims are people who are not really missed. They might not even have been registered as missing. So he's sort of fighting to even get people to care about this case. And it especially gets difficult when his suspicions lead him towards people in high places, and the people in power would much rather sweep this under the rug and forget about all of these children in order to protect their own. I specifically enjoyed more the characters. The 2 priests in particular, I thought were believable as human beings. They were very funny, and I actually grew up Catholic, and one of my deacons was from the Philippines, and I was just kind of picturing Deacon Henry the whole time. And Deacon Henry is also just like a kind of jolly guy. I think that a lot of people people tend to think of priests as like very button up, have no sense of humor. But I think I was quite lucky, for as much as I didn't enjoy my Catholic upbringing and I'm not involved in the faith at all anymore. I think I was quite lucky that like my priest and kind of everybody involved in my personal church were like really funny and weren't super loyal either to the kind of hierarchy. Like I think that the structure of the Catholic Church in terms of just like the politics of it is really fascinating. And this book kind of talked about that, how, you know, priests don't question their bishops and bishops don't question their cardinals and etc. So yeah, I actually really enjoyed this. I think it also does help to kind of have that background of Catholicism. Yeah, if you're okay with reading about really dark and graphic stuff, I mean, a lot of this is, we're talking autopsies, we're talking very gruesome details of these murders. And I was gonna look this up. Actually, I felt like these characters could have continued with a series. Like, I'm just interested to read more of the priests. But yeah, in terms of it being a thriller, solid read. So smaller and smaller circles. After that, I read Japanese Gothic, and this was one of the first books that I read in one day in a long time. I used to be able to consume books in a day pretty easily, and I talk about this I made a whole what I read in a week video if you want like kind of more of my reactions as I was reading it. But yeah, I've been just kind of struggling in terms of not loving books and also just my attention span. So Japanese Gothic, while it wasn't a perfect book, I am so grateful to it for giving me something that I could devour, and devour I did. So Japanese Gothic, we are following two different characters and two different timelines. One is a boy living modern day. He just left NYU to go visit his dad who lives in Japan. Our main character is half Japanese. His mother was Japanese. His dad is like a random white dude who only dates Japanese women, which is weird. But anyway, our main character left NYU because he may or may not have murdered his roommate. So we're dealing with that. And then on the other hand, we have our main female character who is living in the late 1800s in the same house as our main character. And she comes from a samurai family at the end of the era of the samurai. So her family is kind of living in hiding. They're not supposed to exist. They're not supposed to be samurai anymore. And so she kind of trains in secret. Her whole life revolves around protecting her younger brothers from any threat of like, if the government were to find them and show up at the house, she's ready. Okay, this girl knows how to use a sword. But when they find that a specific closet in the house connects their timelines, both of them think that the other is a ghost or a demon, and they both want to use each other for different gains. So our girl wants to figure out how she dies so that she can prevent it if this demon is from the future, and then our boy wants to learn how to speak to ghosts if this girl is a ghost, as he believes, because his mother went missing and he believes she died and he wants to contact her. So I will say that this book is being marketed as horror. I think if you are a die-hard horror fan, you will be a little disappointed in the horror aspects. I don't think it was scary. I think that it was trippy, especially the last, I would say 40 pages. What on earth was going on? There were so many, like, because you're switching timelines and certain timelines are like stacked upon each other, you kind of don't know what is a dream, what is a hallucination, what is psychosis, what is real. So I think it was more trippy and psychological than it was necessarily horror. There was a bit of blood. I mean, one of our main girls is a samurai and our main guy may or may not have killed somebody, but it wasn't, especially because later in the month I read like a true horror novel. This one, I feel like if you go into it wanting horror, you might be a little bit disappointed. So temper your expectations. Just a trippy read. Again, not perfect, but I actually really liked the characters. And I also liked that, I mentioned this in my other video, but once you get to the end, you realize that a piece of the puzzle that I personally didn't think really mattered, I thought it was just kind of added for ambiance, that little piece is essential to the end of the story, which I really appreciated. So that is Japanese Gothic, a good like sticky summer book for sure. After that, I read Bloodbound. I've been hearing about this nonstop, finally got it from the library, and then I had a long line of people behind me and Libby was pressuring me because if you don't use Libby on the app, it shows you like how many people are waiting behind you in line. And I always feel bad because I don't like to wait for books. So when I saw that there were 6 or 7 people waiting behind me, I was like, let's lock in. Let's read this book. So, Bloodbound. This gave me the same feeling as other fantasy books that I didn't love, but were very readable. So if you liked, I kept thinking of Three Twisted Crowns. I think that's the name of the series. It felt very nostalgic. It felt like a book I'd read before, not necessarily in a bad way, but it was more of like an old comfort read, but not a favorite, if that makes sense. In Bloodbound, we're following two different POVs. The author, Ellis Hunter, I think is their name. It's actually a pseudonym. Ellis Hunter is actually two people. They are two best friends and they are writing best friend characters, which becomes very obvious at the end. I actually loved what they did and I thought it was really funny. Like I would totally do that with my best friend if we were writing a fantasy book. However, we're essentially living in a world where there are two different kingdoms and they share this like well of magic. But every generation, the eldest heir to each throne, they duel to the death, and then whoever wins that gets control of the well of power, right? So for the past, I think it's 400 years, one country has always won and always controlled the magic. So we're getting ready for another duel and our main girl has to go to this kingdom to prepare to fight. Everyone's assuming she's gonna lose, but because they've been without magic for so long, her country is really suffering from a blight. So she's very motivated to win. I can't really tell you too much about our other POV because I want it to unfold naturally for you, but we have animal familiars. Our main girl's familiar is a sassy little cat. Everybody else has like giant dragons or bears or tigers. Our girl has like a sassy little like Salem of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, which I think is really funny. So like I said, it felt a little bit like something I've already read before. The romance, I just really wasn't there for any of it. There are like a couple different romantic interests. Wasn't rooting for anybody. And I think that's kind of the point, to be honest. It really picked up speed at the end. I'm interested in the second book. It didn't leave the biggest impression on me, but I was entertained. There were just some editing issues that were kind of weird, like words missing and stuff like that. But you know, if you want just kind of like a palate cleanser, a book that feels like it was from maybe the mid 2010s, there you go. It didn't waste my time, but it won't be something that I necessarily remember. Like even now, like the Three Twisted Crowns and Bloodbound, even though they aren't very similar, I kind of just have them mixed in my mind already. And I read Bloodbound like what, 2-3 weeks ago. So not a standout, but not bad. Maybe if you're in a reading slump, this might like zhuzh something in your brain. Give it a go. Get it from the library, you know? Then I picked up the Silver Book and I'm so glad that I went into this book knowing absolutely nothing. So if you are interested in Italian cinema and specifically you don't know anything about Italian cinema in the 1970s, go ahead and read this. Go ahead and skip this section if you don't want to know anything. Okay? Timestamps down below. But if you want it a little bit spoiled or you aren't as ignorant as I am, the Silver Book is about the Italian movie industry in the 1970s. And we're following one boy who has fled from England because he did something. We don't quite know what, but he like ruined someone's life and now he's on the run. He runs to Venice and he is an artist. So while he is sitting sketching one day, an older man comes up to him and is like, "Ooh, you sketch really well. I actually need some help with my work. I too am an artist. How about I hire you, you sketch in Venice with me, and then at the end of this trip, if we like our work together, you can come with me back to Rome." And this man is a man named Danilo, and he works in the movie industry making sets. So his job is to come and like sketch different locations so that then he can go back and make the giant sets in Rome for the film. And so we kind of follow these two. They of course start a romantic relationship. We kind of follow these two through, it's over a year, I think, when we're working on 2 or 3 different films. So I found it really readable, mainly because it was written in a very matter-of-fact and rather short way. Like there was no time for me to really get bored because we kept moving on to the next thing. And I was so interested in the historical aspect of it. However, I will say pluses and minuses. The positive is that after I finished this book, I was able to go look up all of the films that are mentioned because they were real films. The negative is that the people in the book, other than our main character, everyone else is real. So it low-key felt, actually high-key felt like fan fiction. because a lot of this book is like the sexual relations between the like sexual and romantic relations between all of these people. That's sort of why I guess I never got into fan fiction, is because all of my fandoms have been, like when I was a kid, have mostly been real people. So like I was really into emo band culture, things like that. So if there was ever fan fiction written about my fandoms, they were real people, and I didn't ever feel comfortable reading that. If it's like fictional characters, do your thing. But in this case, the Silver Book, they are real people, and she took a lot of liberties, like unless she found diaries and things like that written by these men, I just felt a little uncomfy afterwards. While I was reading it, it didn't matter, but when I found out that, oh, these are real people she's talking about, I felt a little strange. So if you are familiar with these characters, who, by the way, like I'm just ignorant. Like, these are huge names. Actually, one of the films that they're working on in this book, our main character Danilo ends up winning an Oscar for like costume or set design for it. Like, these aren't just like small indie films. Okay. So it just felt a little strange to me after the fact. While I was reading it, it didn't matter, if that makes sense. While I was reading it, I was on a solo trip to the beach, and it just felt like a perfect little summer solo trip read, but I think it really needs to be read at the right time. Like, the fact that I was on that particular solo trip made a difference. If I had just read it like at home during my work week kind of thing, I probably would have DNF'd it. So it's just one of those books that came to me at the right time, and I actually enjoyed it. That is the Silver Book. Ooh, after that, come to me. I finally read Reservoir, Bitches. I've had this on my shelf for so long. This was another book that I read in one day, actually, mainly because the margins on this and the font's really big, the margins, there's just a lot of blank space on these pages. I really liked this. These are a bunch of interconnected stories about women living in Mexico. Some of them are darkly funny. Some of them are horrifying. Some of them are supernatural. I loved every single one of them. What was my favorite one? I think there are like two that really stick out in my mind. We have one character who is the daughter of the head of like a drug empire, basically, and she is going to inherit this empire. Absolutely loved her. And then we also have her best friend's older sister who wants to be like the Mexican Jackie Kennedy. Like, she is also hilarious. Like, there was so much of it that, even though it is really dark, there was so much of it that is like absurd in a way. I just had a really good time. It gets, I think the last 3 or so stories get really dark. It's especially talking about the missing women, abduction and disappearances of hundreds of women in Mexico. I felt like I was getting gentle whiplash with these stories. I would kind of be chuckling, and then I would be like, oh. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it. This was great. Reservoir, Bitches. Really enjoyed, ate this up in a day. I think it's like 100 something pages, but it's 180 pages, but honestly it felt like it was maybe 60 because of the font size. Highly recommend. Glad I finally picked it up. Ooh, and I have another physical book. Haha. To Seek the Traitor's Son. Oh, just Seek. Why do I can't get the title of this right. Seek the Traitor's Son. Veronica Roth. All right, let me gather my thoughts about this. I didn't take notes, so bear with me. No, that's not a good idea. Seek the Traitor's Son was such an odd reading experience. I enjoyed it. I personally enjoyed reading it, but I don't know if everyone would. This was not what I expected. I, for some reason, thought that this was marketed as more enemies to lovers. I don't know. Maybe that was just me. Maybe I heard wrong. But this is very bizarre. We essentially have 2 warring kingdoms, and the sort of heirs to those thrones are called in one day to speak to the oracles because there has been a prophecy. And the oracles are made up of like, I think it's 6 or 8 of them, and they can't decide how the prophecy ends. Half of them see it ending one way, half of them see the scales tipping the other way. And so it's basically who is going to win this war that is coming. But at the center of this, whoever wins, they're both going to fall in love with this man, the traitor's son, okay? And so, of course, war erupts, and our main character, Elegy, is trying to make sure that her kingdom wins against this kingdom that is much larger, much more powerful than hers. I will say it does something that I didn't expect. The very beginning is incredibly action-packed, and then we get a bit of a time jump. So good on you, Veronica Roth, for surprising me, for not being afraid to go there, to not pull your punches. But I'm just not sure how I feel about it. I feel like I didn't understand the romance, and maybe that's the point. I felt like the romance happened because of the prophecy. I didn't really feel their love happen naturally. I personally really enjoyed our main character's half sister or like stepsister a lot more. This is an odd little book. It definitely reads more sci-fi than fiction. I'm not explaining this well because honestly, this is so difficult to explain. I was honestly a little bit confused by the world in the beginning because I thought we were dealing with 2 different planets, but we're dealing with one planet. Oh, we're in some like super futuristic Los Angeles, by the way. And what's it called? It's called like Los Ann. Everything is like a slightly off version. Like there's Australia, but it's called just like Ossa. What do we have? We have Austra instead of Australia. We have Losan instead of Los Angeles. Oh yeah, we have Noram, which is North America. And yeah, we have a space station. Anyway, I thought we were dealing with different planets. We're just dealing with Earth. But yeah, just like the world building was a little weird. I liked it, but it was one of those books where I also didn't really understand what was going on half the time. I felt like things happened quite easily. There's a huge portion where we're trying to uncover the memories of a man. And it's quite easy. Like I thought it would be more difficult, but whenever we need an info dump, he is able to get his memories back. Like some of it, it felt a little bit convenient. Like I said, I kind of liked the side characters more. I liked her half sister. I liked one of her best friends. I just wish I kind of understood our main characters a little bit more. Like I like Elegy separately. I don't even remember our main character's name. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Theron, I like him separately as well. There were so many moments when I cried, but I just didn't get them together, which is like kind of the whole point of the book. So I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. I'm really conflicted. Personally, enjoyed the reading experience, but afterwards thinking back, I'm like, and I'm not looking forward to reading this again in order to read the sequel, So let me know. Maybe my thoughts will change, but that is Seek the Traitor's Son. Not mad that I read it. Really glad I read it physically as well, but to seek The Traitor's Son. After that, another highly anticipated read, The Girl with 1,000 Faces. This is not at all what I expected, and I give it props for taking me completely by surprise. Right when I was about to get bored and kind of be like, something happens, and I was like, oh, okay. So The Girl with 1,000 Faces, we are in Hong Kong in the 1970s. But we're also in Hong Kong in the 1940s. And during World War II, Hong Kong was also taken over by Japan. And half of our story, we're following a girl who has been taken by her family to a very remote island where her mother was from, while her father goes off to kind of get their affairs in order so that they can hide during the war. So our main girl and her mother are living on this very remote island to sort of hide away from the Japanese soldiers. This island is 100% haunted. Like bad things have happened here. There have been storms that have wiped out the entire population. Bad energy. And our main girl and her mother are very susceptible to the energy of ghosts. So this is just a lot of bad news. And then in our 1970s timeline, we're following an older woman who works in the Kowloon walled city. And she is also very connected to the spirits. And so she kind of has a job of running around and dealing with ghosts. She's a ghost talker for hire. She kind of works for the local crime lord. And when she starts to notice a lot of unexplained deaths and a lot more malignant spirits seeming to be at work, she begins to unravel a rather dark and deep plot that threatens her neighbors and Kowloon City as a whole. And it might have to do with the fact that our main character has no memory prior to when she arrived at Kowloon Walled City 20 or 30 years prior. So I will say, loved the setup, loved the beginning, loved every single character, loved that our main character in the 1970s is like a woman in her 50s or 60s. Loved that. Wasn't so drawn in to the 1940s timeline until we realize how this all connects. And it connects in a way that I personally wasn't expecting, and I appreciated that. So then the rest of the story, I was interested to see where it ends. I think to me it felt a little bit long. I love that kind of surprise turn that our story takes, but then I wish it could have wrapped up a little bit faster. I didn't need quite as much of that kind of last half, but overall really liked it. Super, super visual. I could see everything that was happening and filled with a lot of interesting historical references. Like I actually didn't know that much about what was happening in Hong Kong in the 1940s in terms of World War II. Yeah, I think it had its weak points, but I actually really enjoyed it. And again, I appreciated it for having a lot of unexpected moments. And yeah, I would recommend it. I would say that this is almost more horror than Japanese Gothic as well. I felt like there were more vivid descriptions of like scary, spooky things, and things got really dark. So yeah, I definitely recommend The Girl with 1,000 Faces. Next up, how do I even talk about this book? Okay. I got my hands on Moth Dark. How do I talk about this? So first and foremost, this book is so unintentionally silly. The word choices are sometimes so out of the blue. Like I actually took a picture. There was a very serious scene in which our main character is in very dire circumstances. She's being chased by like an army of evil things, whatever, okay? It's looking bad for her. And then all of a sudden the book just says, time to skedaddle. Like, oh, time to skedaddle. Yeah, you're about to die. This was such a trip. This was such an odd little book. I can't say that I loved it, but it was a ride. Moth Dark. So this is an urban fantasy. We are in modern day, maybe a couple years in the future, New York City. And our world is dealing with a strange connection to another dimension, which is only known as the dark. Basically, in various parts of the world, these giant sort of sinkhole, black hole-esque things opened in the ground, and every once in a while, things crawl out, and they are dark versions of what we have in our dimension. So sometimes it's really normal things. It's like a dark butterfly, a dark caterpillar might crawl out, and like, okay, whatever. Usually when it gets hit by light, it dies or goes back to the dark, whatever. Sometimes a dark mammoth or like a dark Godzilla comes out and kills a lot of people. So the dark is viewed as a very dangerous thing. All of the places that like any kind of portal to the dark is usually either boarded up or like surrounded by weapons and these lights and like new technologies we've created to keep the dark in the dark, right? And so our main girl is part of a small group of young students who were selected because of their sort of unique skill to understand and like be drawn to the dark. They are all, I think it's at Columbia University, but either way, they are all working together to create like various technologies and like research the dark. And surprise, surprise, our main girl is mainly concerned with moths, dark moths, because they are always following her, always coming to her, etc. But the most important thing to know about the dark is that there are no humanoid creatures that have ever come out of the dark. It's always plants, it's always animals. But one day, our main girl is reaching into the dark to check on her moths, and a hand grabs her, and out comes what she calls an elf prince. I just picture Carden the whole time. If that sells you, it sells you, okay? What follows is a really interesting story that has to do with how messy time can be and how violence begets violence begets violence. And actually thinking back, I feel like I like it more. While I was reading it, it got, especially like the last third, I was just kind of getting whiplash because there's a lot of betrayals and reveals and betrayals and reveals that I was just kind of like, what is going on? Like the second our main characters would like be madly in love, something would happen and then they would hate each other's guts, and it was just a lot. I was like, this is too much for me. I need someone with a little bit more emotional stability. So I was just kind of getting annoyed at our characters, but I found the idea of the book really interesting. And I do love an urban fantasy that takes place in New York City, so it kind of had me there. I think a lot of people would enjoy it. I just think that it got a little sloppy in terms of like the character, specifically our dark character. I got a little confused and annoyed by them for kind of the last 50% of the book, but I did think, again, that kind of exploration of time was really interesting. Also, the exploration of gender expression, like when you are a darkling, a thing of the dark, you can freely choose how your gender is expressed, and it's all like dependent on the marks on your well, you'll read it. Anyway, I thought that that was really interesting and handled in a cool way. So mainly positives. I just think personally I got very annoyed by the characters at the end, but I would still give it a try if that kind of piqued your interest. Like a moody elf character that the first time they meet, he's trying to kill her and she's just like, I'm just a scientist. I just want to study you and blah, blah, blah. Give it a go. That's Moth Dark. Doesn't get my full stamp of approval, but I truly believe a lot of you would like it. There it is. Moth Dark. After that, I got We Dance Upon Demons. First of all, amazing cover. I read a lot of purple books. Yeah, I read a lot of purple books for some reason this month. We Dance Upon Demons. I had an interesting time with it because the part that I thought was supposed to be the most interesting was actually the absolutely least interesting. We are dealing with present day. Our main character works at an abortion clinic. One day when she is just kind of killing time at a museum, she touches something, accidentally awakens a demon, may or may not have stolen a little bit of that demon's power. And so for the rest of the book, she suddenly can see the demon realm, and all of these demons are trying to get her to give up that piece of power that she took before she uses it herself. But she also doesn't know how to use it, so we have to figure that one out too. So our main girl is not only trying to deal with the absolute horror of working at an abortion clinic in the Midwest after the fall of Roe v. Wade, she's also dealing with demons in the demon realm. So I was actually most interested in her work at the abortion clinic and how to keep it running, how to keep people safe, how to deal with like the neighborhoods and the protests and all of these things. And then I also found there's a lot of flashbacks to other women who have dealt with demon power, and I really liked those. But in terms of the like demons in the present time that our girl is actually dealing with, I really didn't care. There were just a lot of points that I felt like the demon part of the book could have been a lot more interesting. I couldn't really understand like what was the power that she had. We were given examples of what other women did with it, but what was she expected to do with it? Why was she so adamant about keeping it and not giving it up and making all of these demons go away when these demons are like threatening to kill her loved ones? There were just some things that I didn't think were very strong, ironically, in terms of the demon section of the book, but in terms of the in real life stuff, I thought that was written really well and I was super intrigued. Like I could have read a whole book simply about her running or working for the abortion clinic. It was weird that for me the demons were the least interesting, especially because like the main demon that she's dealing with is so wishy-washy. Like he doesn't seem evil, he doesn't seem good, he's not funny, he was just kind of there. I liked about 50% of the book, but if you want to read it because you were like, ooh, urban fantasy demons, not quite. So it was kind of a bummer, but that is We Dance Upon Demons. After that, now we are getting into the arcs. So this is coming out in June. I'll put the information down below, but the US title is The Devil Knows Her Name. And this was sold to me because it is an Appalachian horror story about a witch who makes a deal with the devil and has to deal with the consequences. So how do I explain this? I had a good time with this. This is the one where I was like, this is a horror novel that made Japanese Gothic feel not horrific at all. There were jump scares. I felt uncomfortable reading a lot of The Devil Knows Her Name. I think it's there were points where I thought like, okay, it's a little overly descriptive. This takes place in Appalachia. And the author really takes their time explaining the nature. Like, the woman cannot just walk out the door. She has to walk past 7 different types of roses, and we learn about each type of rose. You know, like it was, in the beginning, that was really wonderful and set the scene. But as we got deeper into the story, I was sort of like, okay, I know every single bush in this forest. Let's move on. Our main character story really starts, I believe, in the 1930s when she is a young woman in this tiny town with her mother. Her mother and her grandmother are witches, but her mother is very scared of being a witch. So she has always made our main character suppress her powers, not practice anything. And that has just made our main character kind of like almost boil over with magic. She just wants to use it so badly, right? And she doesn't understand why her mother is so cowardly, so ashamed of her powers, etc. And let's just say harm comes to our main character. She calls upon someone to save her soul. And who answers the call but the devil himself? So then we fast forward to present day. I believe it's in like the 2020s. And we're still in this same small town. Our main character is still the same young woman. And she is just living her life running an animal sanctuary. Overall, she's just like, I'm taking care of my raccoons, I'm taking care of my squirrels, and as long as nobody bothers me, this is going to be my life for the rest of eternity. So what happens when a new priest and his family, a preacher, minister, and his family roll into town, start shaking things up in the name of the Lord? And these new strangers moving in coincide with a lot of strange things happening to the nature, to our witch's magic. There is a creepy ass deer, a fawn, a deer baby that is born and is maybe evil. I loved the deer character, actually, as our witch's magic begins to falter, as the harm that was caused to her in her past maybe manifests in a different form in present day, when the devil comes knocking a lot more often, asking her to finally give in and fully give over her powers to him. Just everything has been thrown into chaos, and I actually it was really, really readable. I'm not sure how I feel about the ending. Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about the ending, but particularly the deer storyline, because I believe the original working title for this was just Fawn, and it might even just be titled that in the UK. But that little baby deer, obsessed. So if you're interested in like a little witchy time up in the mountains with a lot of characters that just make you feel very uncomfortable, I actually enjoyed this a lot. It wasn't a favorite, but I had a good time, and that is The Devil Knows Her Name. And the last book that I finished for May is Strange Girls. I ate this up, actually. This was one of those books that I've read this particular type of book a million times. Sometimes they hit, sometimes they don't. This one hit. So we are following 2 best friends. They were so close that they called each other twins. They shared everything. They were obsessed with each other. It's one of those friendships that was borderline romantic, obsessive, a little toxic. We are following Ava in the present day. They are now in maybe their late 20s or their 30s. Ava has come to London to attend her friend Nora's bachelorette party. And so while she's there, she's going to be staying in the guest bedroom of Aaliyah, her former best friend twin, who she has not spoken to for reasons unknown for potentially years. Okay, so it's awkward, it's weird. Aaliyah is married now. We have to meet the husband. It's just, the tension is thick. Things are left unsaid. We don't know what happened. Okay, our other POV is Aaliyah, but back when they just started uni. So Aaliyah has moved to kind of the outskirts of London from Pakistan. She lived in Karachi, and she wants to be a writer. And she doesn't really like the in-person creative writing clubs that she has joined. So instead she joins a forum and immediately connects at, like I said, an almost romantic level with this mysterious other writer. When they finally meet, instantaneous, best friends, cannot be separated from each other. And so for the entire 4 years of university, we follow them and see this relationship grow and morph. Like I said, I've read a million of these, like these kind of obsessive friendships that turn sour in university, a dime a dozen. We've read a million of them, but I think that the pacing of this one was just really good. Like there was never a point where I wanted to put it down because I needed to know what happened next. And they weren't until like kind of the very end, they weren't actually horribly toxic to each other. It was actually a really loving relationship. The toxicity was actually really subtle. I think that in a lot of stories like this, we have people doing like active harm to each other and just brushing it off because like, oh, she's my bestie. But these were like really subtle changes in the relationship. There weren't any like huge betrayals until kind of the end. So yeah, I was just kind of glued to the page, incredibly readable. The characters felt realistic. Does it fully stand out? No, this kind of story has been written many, many times, but if you like those kind of stories, this is a great one and I highly recommend it. And I would definitely read more of this author's work. So that is Strange Girls. It also, there were a lot of musical references, so I actually had a lot of fun updating my playlist after I read this. So Strange Girls. And last but not least, what I'm currently reading, I'm reading an arc. When does it come out actually? I think it comes out in August. September. Okay, sorry, you're gonna have to wait. September 29th, The Thief and the Traitor Bride. This is by the author of The Second Death of Locke, and this takes place in the same world. It's not, I'm only 30% of the way through, so I don't know if characters from that book are going to be showing up, but I do think it says that it is a standalone romantic fantasy, but I feel like you gotta kind of read The Second Death of Locke, in my opinion, so far, okay? But what is The Thief and the Traitor Bride about? We are following our main character, Noor. Noor is a spy. She has been a spy since she was 13. She runs odd jobs. She works for the Duchess. She's a 30-something-year-old woman, tired, okay? She has taken on one too many jobs, but she cannot say no to the Duchess because this woman has given her everything, including her identity, right? She gets sent on a mission to retrieve a magical object that we don't get much information on, but she's not going alone. She needs help because she's going to a different country where there's a different magical system that she doesn't know how to use. So she needs somebody who's from there, somebody who knows this magic, somebody she's married to. Yes, we don't know the details, but she was married to a man named Caspian, and Caspian betrayed her horrifically to the point where she has asked, like, okay, if I do this with him, Duchess, am I allowed to kill him afterwards? And the Duchess is like, absolutely yes. So whatever he did, she believes he deserves death for it, okay? So they have to go work together to go on this like mysterious quest for a magical object. And in the background, the characters of The Second Death of Locke, it's like maybe 5 or so years after the end of The Second Death of Locke, something's up with them. So that's why I say it says it's a standalone. I will be the judge of that. I will give you an update. Again, I'm 30% of the way through. I think it might be more like a sequel. So I'll let you know, but so far, so good. I'm not fully drawn in yet, but I feel like right where I have stopped, they have just reached their destination and now we're gonna start investigating, finding shit, being spies. And we're also getting some flashbacks to understand how they met, how they fell in love, and what the hell happened between the two of them. We still don't know. So I have high hopes, but the first 30% isn't completely drawing me in like The Second Death of Locke did. So we shall see. But that is what I am currently reading. I'm hoping to actually finish it this weekend. And I will update you on my Instagram, I guess. So yeah, I think I had a pretty good reading month. I had a lot of fun. I still can't get over the use of skedaddle in Moth Dark. That just like took me out. Yeah, an interesting mix of books, but I think that that's what kept it fun and fresh this month. And yeah, let me know your thoughts, especially about Seek the Traitor's Son. Like I said, I had a good time, but I don't really know why. And what do you think of the put spoiler ... if you want to talk about certain spoilery things, let's just say, okay? My holds list for Libby is so good. Once these books come in, I'm gonna have the best reading month. I need to talk to Libby about their definition of available soon because I've had a book that I really want to read that has been listed as available soon for weeks and I'm dying. So hopefully June will also be a really great reading month. I have faith. And yeah, I will catch you guys next time. If you haven't watched my reading vlog, I'll link it down below, but I did more of an in-depth for 4 of these books. You can see more of my live reading reaction. And yeah, let me know what you're reading. as always, I get a lot of these recommendations from you guys, so let me know. And thank you again to Squarespace. You can go to squarespace.com/carrycanread, get 10% off your first website or domain. That information will be in the description box. Love to you always, and I will talk to you next time. Will I be reading the sequel to Metal Slinger this month and making a live reaction to it? You bet. So I will see you there. Okay? Thank you always. Catch you next time.